On this week's episode of Into Geek, we delve into the greatest fantasy game of all time, Dungeons & Dragons. So come with me as I teach you little tips and tricks and how to get started. It's not as hard as you think. So let's sit back, relax, and let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Into Geek podcast. As always, I'm Andrew, and joined by nobody. Today, I will be solo as Chase and Allison had some family stuff that they had to do. So I will be doing a solo adventure here, which maybe fits because today we'll be talking all about Dungeons and Dragons. But before we get into that, I wanted to kind of save my nerd cred a little bit. A week ago or so during the interview with Rod Kirby, I had mentioned that the casting that came out for Spider-Man 3, I think the casting I was looking at was actually for Doctor Strange 2, which showed Tobey Maguire, Ryan Reynolds, and Andrew Garfield. So that had like a really big mega cast. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it was some Photoshop BS or something, but if that is true, it sounds really cool. But enough about that. We're going to get into Dungeons & Dragons, which is one of my favorite things of all time. On today's show, originally what I wanted to do was have a big Zoom call that was going to have everybody who's going to be playing in my newest game, where I will be the Dungeon Master. And we have like 6 players, including Allison and Chase. But unfortunately, 2 of them got called away for work purposes. So we only had 4 people. And then I decided maybe I'll just do like a tutorial teaching you how to be a player and be like a better one, and then tips for being a first-time dungeon master, and also kind of like the ins and outs of the game and what my campaign is going to be all about. And then at the very end of this, we have like a 20-minute end video of that Zoom call with the 4 of us, where everybody kind of explains their character and class and background. So if that's interesting to you, I'll put a little time here for the YouTube people. Podcast listeners, you can just skip ahead, or you can listen to my fabulous voice all by itself. So let's get into it, man. What is Dungeons and Dragons? I'm sure at this point you've heard about it at some juncture in your life around like geek news, whatever. And for a long time, it had a really bad rap. People thought it's just like the super nerdy thing, and it kind of is, but it's a super social, fun thing. The best way to explain it is improv with rules attached to it, which sounds kind of like counterintuitive, but it's a social storytelling game. So you and your friends all get together. You all basically think of it as if you got to play a character in like a Harry Potter book. And all of y'all get to do the adventures together and everything, except the person who's writing the book is the Dungeon Master, which is kind of like the person who is creating all of the tension, all the story, all the elements that drive things forward. And it's a super lot of fun when it's done right. When it's done wrong, it can be very tedious and boring, and you can hate playing it, and it can turn you on your friends, which has happened. But if you get like a really good group together, I think it's one of the most rewarding things to do with your free time. So that's kind of what it is. It's been out since like the 70s, created by Gary Gygax. We're now on the 5th edition from 70s into like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, blah, 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 whatever. And when the 4th edition came out, it kind of sucked, and it hit a big wall. And it wasn't until the newest edition came back and it kind of reintroduced all of the original elements. And not only that, but a lot of famous actors and people, which I'll put up on the screen here for everybody who's watching on YouTube. They kind of like brought it into the forefront. Mainly a show called Critical Role, which I think if you're a Dungeons & Dragons fan, you know about this for better or for worse. It's extremely entertaining. It has 6 very, very well-known voice actors that have this really movie-esque style game, which brought in a lot of new players, created a whole bunch of new like YouTube channels and stuff or whatever. I say for worse because a lot of new players expected their dungeon master to run the exact same game and for it all to be like just like that. But it's every dungeon master runs it differently. So unfortunately, a lot of people, their first at bat with Dungeons and Dragons was like, this weird feeling. But all these famous people who have come out that are actors and stuff and everything else has created this huge boon of just like Dungeons and Dragons awesomeness or whatever. So I think it's at like a really, really great point right now. And you might be thinking, I've always wanted to play. How do I start? First and foremost, I would suggest you really only need the player's handbook, which is going to be this. If you can see it on screen, can't because I have a green screen. Wow, it sucks. You really only need that. It costs them maybe like 40, 50 bucks. Y'all can all get together and drop like 10 bucks each. And you can literally use that for like 5 years of entertainment. Now, there are a lot more books if you want to be more in depth. Like there is a player's handbook, a monster manual, which is going to have every type of creature possible. There is a dungeon master guide, which is going to help you run the game better. A whole bunch more options and variants, magical items, traps, puzzles, maps, everything else or whatever. Then there are these actual specific campaign books that have an entire adventure already written for you. They already have characters and NPCs and everything else or whatever, and items and whatever. So if you're feeling like a little overwhelmed and you don't want to create a whole story yourself, these are a really great avenue. Those run about like 20 to 30 bucks. Some are definitely better than others. Curse of Strahd is incredible. I would not run that first since it has such a high level of thematic narration, and it's probably more suited for a more experienced group. That doesn't mean that a new group can't have fun with it, but experienced group can really get in there and really have like a lot of great times, I think, with it. Now, how do you start with character creation? There are a multitude of classes. I think in the main book, there's like 9, and these are your basic things like fighter, ranger, wizard, cleric, blah, 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 whatever. If you play a lot of like MMOs and video games, a lot of these are going to come down to your AoEs, your tanks, your healer, and your like DPS. This is something that they try to do in 4th edition that people really didn't like. But that's the best way to understand that playing like a rogue, which is like a thievish style character, is going to be like a really high damage person. So maybe you're a character or a player that really likes to be the really big, strong guy. So maybe you go for a character like a barbarian, which is their entire role during combat is to get like in the front and be like a big meat shield, and they just rage and smash things and kill things and drink and have a great time. Or maybe you want to play a person who's also a fighter and can do all those things, but is more stoic, and that would be your paladin, which is this basically this warrior of light and fights for their god, and they get all types of cool powers and abilities and mounts and stuff, whatever. Every class is going to be built entirely different, and every class is going to speak to a different person. After you play for a little bit, you're going to kind of get into a groove where you really like playing fighters because your style is very one way, or maybe you're like a real big fan of rogues or of like mages, and that's totally okay. Once you find what works for you, there's no reason to feel the need to change. It's all about having fun. From there, after you pick your class, every class is going to have a specific need. So there are, I believe, 6 stats in the game: strength, charisma, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and dexterity. All of these are going to play up like a variance in terms of when you roll things. These are going to be the bonuses. So like a barbarian is going to need like high levels of strength and hit points, which come from constitution. So when you do your stats, you're going to want to put your highest numbers in those things so that, your guy can kind of kick ass based on what works for him. But if you're playing a mage, the things that work for them are going to be like intelligence. So you're not really going to want to have a lot of points in strength and constitution because you're not trying to carry things or fight hand to hand. Now, if you're trying to be a character that maybe doesn't want to fight at all and you want to like talk your way to battles, maybe we're going to put your stats into something like charisma, which can be like this combination of looks and your ability to speak. So characters like bards and rogues tend to kind of get into trouble and need to be able to like talk their way out of things. So there are 2 kinds of ways to do stats. The more traditional thing is rolling, which you're going to take these things called D6, which is your basic dice. It's going to be something that like they use on the crap table. In like your common like Yahtzee game, Monopoly game. It's going to have 6 sides. So every dice, the D stands for die, and the number is going to stand for how many sides are on that die. So there are things from like a D4 all the way up to a D20, and there's basically certain items use certain different things. So like your short sword uses a D6, but your great sword uses 2 D6, or your battle axe uses a like D12. It sounds a little confusing at first, but it's super easy to kind of catch on to it and everything. Going from your stats, you're going to be going into your skills. Every class is more trained in certain things. So your common rogue is going to be really good at things like sleight of hand, at talking, at like acrobatics and things like that. But your wizard is going to be more trained in the arcane arts. So they're going to have more skill in knowing magical items and things of that nature. But your barbarian is going to be really good at like athletics and like, picking up things and moving things, or maybe like, a hiding or something like that, or whatever. So there's a whole multitude of skills. When you start your guy, you're going to get a choice of, I believe, like 2 to 3, unless you're a bard or a rogue, and they get more. From there, you're going to get to pick something called a background, which is kind of like, what was your guy doing before he was an adventurer? So you're this really cool, badass fighter now, but before you got into that, what were you doing? Were you like a thug? Were you a charlatan? Were you this acolyte? Were you working in the like military? So that's kind of going to help you begin your guy and understand how he started. And that also is going to give you a couple of extra skills and some money and some things like that. And it's going to kind of teach you your character's flaws and your traits, so that when you have to role play, you can look at those and understand, okay, so my guy's afraid of water. And so he's not going to want to like, cross over this bridge. And so then like, your rogue might have to like, talk to him and like, convince him into these things or whatever and stuff. Once you get past your background, you're going to want to get your equipment, which is going to be like your armor, your spell book, your shield, your sword, all that stuff, whatever, the things that like really make you cool and are going to make you effective in combat. This can be one of the most fun things to do, but it can also be very tedious, especially if you start off at a higher level campaign and you have a lot of gold. And so you're buying basically everything in the book. But those are just the basics of creating a character. I don't want to go too much into that because I'm sure there's a lot of like really great YouTube things and other podcasts doing that. This is just an overall tutorial of what Dungeons and Dragons is. Moving on from character creation, you're going to want to do a session 0. That was something that we were filming, but it kind of had some issues, so we're only putting up a little bit of that. A session 0 is going to be the first time that the players and the dungeon master get together, and the whole purpose of this is for the DM / dungeon master is going to explain how his game's going to be. So currently what I'm running is my own sort of, I say like futuristic or anything, but like it's high fantasy where dwarves have really created a lot of cool sciencey based artifacts and items and things. So it's like it still ships and stuff. But the game is going to start in this wasteland / like a desert in this like really cool city, almost like Hearth in Game of Thrones. So it's very robust, full of life and culture and gambling and all types of cool things or whatever. So these players don't need to create characters that are pirates, because we're not going to be on the high seas. So if you're making like a guy like Jack Sparrow, he's going to feel really, really weird when he's in this entire desert-based place for about 6 months. Now, that does not mean that you cannot create that character. Just know that a lot of the traits and the skills and things that you're going to give him might not really come into play. So you might kind of feel a little useless at times when half your character is built to be like, this really awesome pirate who can work boats and stuff. It's a good way to like tell your players what you expect of them in terms of role playing. Is your game going to be more combat based? And that's the case, and everybody's really going to pull back on any type of really important character traits, and they're going to just be more focused on creating characters that are really good in combat. And also vice versa. Maybe you're making a very high politics intrigue style game, and everybody needs to be involved in like families and secrecy and everything. And so if that's the case, you don't want to make this really cool Conan style barbarian who's really good at smashing 5 people at once when he's going to be stuck in these weird council meetings and he can barely read and write. So, so it's a really good thing to do at a session 0 to kind of explain the type of game. Also, how people might react towards like, certain humor and dark comedy. It's always great to know the limits of what people think is funny. and you don't want to get into, a situation where your players are joking about something, or a person's doing something and it's making other people very uncomfortable. It can really tear apart a party in like real life, and it can really kill games. So it's a great place to start to understand where everybody stands in terms of wanting certain things in the game and not wanting certain things in the game. And this is also a good place to talk about like rules at the table in terms of, maybe you don't want phones at the table. Maybe you don't want crosstalk and stuff or whatever going on. And also time and place where everybody's going to be meeting up, and the time that it's like, maybe we're all thinking of playing Saturdays at noon, from like noon to like 4. And so, it's always good to be on time and to be respectful of everybody else's time. Moving on from session 0, I'm going to talk about player tips. These are 3 quick tips that I think can help out anybody who is starting off as a player. These will make your dungeon master like you so much more, and he'll be less inclined to kill you. Just joking, kind of. Player tip number 1, know your character. I cannot tell you over the years, which has been over 20 years I've been playing, how annoying it is to be at a table and you're in a very intense combat scenario, and it comes to one player's turn and they don't know what to do. And everybody else at the table already knows their character, and it's like, well, why don't you do this or this? And they get locked in by paralysis because they are looking at their character sheet, and they don't know what would be the best action here, how far that they can move, what their numbers are, attack bonuses. So when you come to the table, know what your guy can do. I mean, like, if you know that you're a first level character that has these types of spells, and you get into a certain type of situation, already know ahead of time what you're going to do, man. Because combat can already be a slog, and that does not mean that it's not fun, but once you get higher level, man, like you've got all types of options and abilities and stats and powers and magical items. And so you're going to get a lot more intense combat scenarios later on. I mean, imagine playing a really cool video game, and the game has to pause every time that your guy wants to, like, fire his gun. And so it's just like, and then it's telling you, okay, well, like, these numbers happened, and then this and this, whatever. So it's like playing like almost like a real-time strategy, type of game. Number 2, pay attention. There's nothing more annoying. I mean, I would take 6 players who don't know their character over people that are not paying attention at the table. These are the players that are, when they're not involved in the current scene, or if it's not their turn in combat, they are on their cell phone. They are doodling on papers and stuff, whatever. They are talking to other people during their turns. They are up grabbing food or snacks or whatever in the other room, watching television. And then every time that it comes to, like, their turn, or it's this important story element, they have no idea what's going on. And they then have to, so then after like a whole paragraph of me explaining this current room and the situation and what's going on, and they get to them and they're like, I don't know where I am or the room, and they don't remember things. It's incredibly rude. It's very disrespectful. We're all there together to have a good time. And if you're not having a good time, it's probably the reason why you're not paying attention. Maybe you should be playing. I mean, like, that's totally okay. I'm sure everybody is fine with you stepping away because you're just not that into it, man. Or if you're not into it, talk to the DM afterwards and tell them how they can best draw you in better. It's all about, a group activity, a group effort here. My last player tip for new players is learn to share the spotlight. I totally get it. D&D is a hell of a lot of fun. And you spent 3 weeks making your dragonborn barbarian who has this really terrible background and backstory of his parents being killed on the roads, and you're trying to find your lost loved one and everything. And so, and you have a really cool accent and like a character drawing and stuff, and you're super into it. But understand that this is a group storytelling game. It's not your storytelling game. This is not like a one-on-one action. This is, everybody wants to get together. Everybody wants to have a turn to be cool. I mean, like, don't make 6 Wolverines and then everybody hates each other because nobody wants to be in this, like, character group, like, dynamic. it's not all about you. And that does not mean that your turn's not going to come and that you're not going to have a really cool story arc, that hopefully your DM has maybe worked in this entire really cool dire background about your family's, like your lost legacy and everything. But understand that every scene is not it's not a chance for you to test out your acting chops. Just because you're at the like local inn and maybe the rogue is talking to the person, it's not your time to come in there and also chop in on their time and start singing and bellowing and everything else, whatever. So learn to share the spotlight. I think that you'll have a much better time when your time in the spotlight is more super intense in shorter moments. Moving on to DMs, here are some tips for people that are starting out. The first thing that I will say is be prepared. I know that more experienced DMs can come to the table and they can do almost like an improv where they are just kind of running things on kind of like on the fly. So be prepared with things as simple as having names. It could be really, really easy to just have a whole list of names from certain races. That way, when your people run into unexpected like NPCs, you could just look to a list and be like, oh, this is blah, blah, blah. Who's of this type of background, and that way you don't have to sit there and be like, oh, it's Hank Smith, which you've already had 5 Hank Smiths or whatever, like in your game and stuff, whatever. So it's always a good idea to have some kind of preparedness going on in terms of items and certain locations and things like that in your towns. Possible notes. I mean, understand that your players are going to want to explore in this world. So don't just have your inn and then maybe a job to do, and then you expect them to just leave and then it's head out and he's into the woods, fight those goblins and hobgoblins and stuff or whatever. Understand that maybe if they go into there and they talk to the person that has the job, maybe they want to hang around for a little bit and then go shop or something. Or maybe they want to go get horses or something. And then you need to all on the fly create a place that has horses and a guy that owns it and stuff or whatever. I mean, just understand that have little quirks and intricacies amongst throughout enough things to do so that you're not constantly caught off guard. Number 2 is don't over prepare. I know that sounds really weird to say because I'm talking about being prepared. And what I mean by don't over prepare is it's really cool for you to sit down for a month and write out a whole campaign, an entire pantheon of gods, an entire country bases and your family lineages and its entire history of wars and how all these wars have then affected all these things or whatever and whatever. But if your players never go to any of these places, you've spent 2 to 3 weeks of your life for no reason whatsoever. I know that early on, I would do this. I would create backgrounds for every single person in my towns in terms of who was related to them, what they used to do. I would create an entire history of that town. And 9 times out of 10, your players are never going to ask. They mainly don't care about the innkeeper and why he only has one arm. They don't. It's very rare. Now, I'm not saying that those things are not cool and that if you have time to do it, that's awesome. But it's in my current campaign, I'm going to have a multitude of countries, but I've really only fleshed out the main country that we're going to be in starting at. So I've got 5 or 6 towns in there. I've got certain map icons and locations for mountains and woods and lakes and rivers and stuff. I've got certain monsters in these areas or whatever and everything. And then I have this other northern country where I have lore and stuff for, but I haven't fleshed out the barons in those lands. I haven't fleshed out, who's running things where, and everything. And so because, I mean, if they never decide to go north, then there's no reason for me to ever have those things. I mean, they could easily work in certain ways in the South and we never leave this main town and they just have really cool interactions for the next year or so in this town or whatever. And that's totally okay, man. Don't get upset because your players aren't exploring more. Your main goal is fun. If your players are having a blast, and then you're killing it. And that's what matters first and foremost. Now, maybe you're getting bored and you want more out of what's going on. And then maybe and that's the case, I would try to push them to maybe experience more things in the area as opposed to just doing like the exact same things every single week or whatever. So from there, my last tip for DMs is this is not a competition. I've DM'd for maybe 5 to 6 years total. I've been a player for like around 20 or so. And I've run across DMs who get pleasure out of beating the party. And I did that like in air quotes because they see it as a game and they view it as if they can kill the party or if they can torture the party or make things hard for them, that they are winning in like, some kind of fashion. Now, if you're playing in a game that is specifically like a meat grinder, which is kind of like it's like a paraphrasing of all of your players are in this dungeon that will progressively get harder and harder. And it's full of just really, really tough bad guys and just like, really like traps and puzzles and really hard boss fights. And it's designed to kill you. Then that is something that y'all will talk about during your session 0. And then everybody knows that they're in for like a really tough, specific hard mode, hell mode style, D&D game, whatever. Right. And that's totally cool. That can be fun, but don't plan on doing that to your group, and they're not expecting that. And then every fight that you go into is brutal, and your players feel as if that they're being cheated and everything. And then every monster is too powerful for them. The whole thing is that like their adventures and they want to feel heroic. I mean, imagine like if in like Lord of the Rings, if Aragorn and Gimli literally got their ass kicked the entire movie or whatever and never looked cool, never had fun. If Legolas's whole bit of him on the shield firing his bow, if he had like tripped and like, rolled his ankle or something or whatever. I mean, like, we would think so much less of him and maybe he's so less cool, So your people want to have fun and do really cool things like that and be these awesome characters of lore and legend and everything. Don't try and stop that. And then also don't be like a softie with that either, though, I mean, so it's not a competition, but it's also not supposed to be this huge, like, pushover. I mean, having hard fought battles that are actually fair can feel very rewarding, and getting to the end of a very long campaign and killing that evil lich in the tower or whatever can feel amazing. But if you get there and it's like a super quick, that there's no challenge whatsoever, then, your players are going to get bored. So it's a very fine line to walk. So just don't be a dick. I guess that's my main thing is don't make everything this terrible slog. Don't make your players do like really stupid skill checks just because you're bored. I mean, like if they're in the woods trying to find food, don't make it like a 2-hour ordeal. Everybody has a limited amount of time. I mean, like, there's so many things going on, like, currently, like in your life, you could be playing video games and there's work and your family and your friends and stuff, whatever. And you're taking time out of all of that to sit down with these people for like 3 to 4 hours a week to have a good time. And if it's something as dumb as like, oh yeah, we played and it literally took us an hour and a half to, make camp and stuff or whatever, because we couldn't find fresh water and wood and stuff like that. And then when all that happened, we were attacked and we all, died because we were attacked by like, 37 goblins and we're all like, level 1 people or something. That's not fun. It doesn't sound fun. And your players will eventually turn on you and they will not want to play with you anymore. So those are my tips for players and for DMs. And my last bit is just have fun, man. D&D is incredible. I've met a lot of really great people. It's helped me express myself. It's helped so many other people who had bouts with, depression, people that just, needed like an outlet for their, creativity. And it was there for me from the age of 15 until now, man. It's so great to sit down and have like a really fun character idea and get to express that. My latest person was this tabaxi rogue, which a tabaxi is like a cat style person. And I made him basically like as if David Bowie was a cat person, and he was a lot of fun. He was just like this like androgynous character and stuff, and he was just super cool and sly, and I love bringing that type of energy to like, games and stuff or whatever. So I think just first and foremost, have fun, man. And if you find a group that you don't click with, don't feel obligated to stay with that group. In the current age, man, you can hit Reddit. There are so many sites. You can hire people now to actually be like, DMs and stuff. So 2020 has brought on so many new options and variants and everything. There's no reason to be in a group where you don't feel accepted. I've been lucky enough that my most recent group is really, really puts forth a lot of energy into like role playing, into combat and stuff, whatever. So, and maybe if you guys are into this, whatever, we'll put our first D&D episode on here and everything, so you guys can check out how role playing works, how combat works. We have 2 new players. But yeah, so thank you for letting me ramble about D&D. I love it so much. I'm gonna clip. I'm gonna clip right here the recording and the video that we shot of a couple of the players, and they're going to explain their characters. So guys, thank you so much for listening. As always, until next time. All right, everybody. So we're going to get into, I guess, our character breakdown here of the people that will be playing in the game coming up. Let's go around and introduce ourselves. As always, I'm Andrew, and I've been playing for like 22 years now, like forever. Probably older than everybody that has been listening to this. Probably, I've been playing that long. Like, I remember back in the day when we had, like rocks and stuff and everything. Yeah. So, Allison, how long have you been playing now?
3 years.
3 years, and then you got started with 5th edition, right?
Right. This is the only edition I've ever played. I started out as a druid. I've played a bard, but honestly, my favorite class and the one that I play the most is rogue. And
what got you interested in wanting to play?
Community.
Which is so funny because it's the most realistic approach to showing D&D. Like, there's no like fantasy stuff, whatever. It's literally just them at the table talking, and that's what it is. And then Matt,
that episode is not on streaming services anymore. But if anybody has the ability to watch, like,
it's on Netflix.
No,
they took it off. Yeah. There was, because there were some insensitive racial
dark elf.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like and stuff, whatever.
I think you possibly can maybe purchase it on Amazon, or I don't know. But if you get the chance to watch that episode, it's really, really fantastic. So.
And then Max is also new. What got you into playing, Max?
It was me talking about it all the time.
Pretty much 100%. We just talked how fun it was and all that good jazz, and seemed like a fun time.
And you are relatively new, right?
I would say I've done a couple like one-offs, but I would never say I played a full campaign or full story, anything like that.
This would be like your first real like foray into it and everything.
Oh yeah, I dipped my toes in, but I haven't gone for a full swim yet.
Yeah. And then Chase, how long have you been playing, and what got you into it?
I got into it. I started playing when I was a little kid. I had an older brother; they played it, so I played a little bit. And I didn't play it again for over 20 years. And I started playing when you and everyone wanted to try it out again. And I like playing, barbarians, fighters, murder hobo guys. So that's what I play.
Guys. And then Matt, how long have you been playing, and what have you gotten into?
First of all, let me say thanks for your patience. I don't have a webcam set up. I've been playing D&D since high school, so probably about half my life, but not quite as successfully as maybe the past, I want to say 5 years. We've kind of really had a good group of people that worked on the same level, or at least same high and or low level of maturity, however you want to scale it. But I guess I've had a vested interest in fantasy since, probably like 4th grade, reading The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, any number of those books. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to role play. It teaches you to practice empathy and lots of skills that could otherwise be lacking if you don't exercise them. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that it's really helped me understand like improv and like being like more like witty and stuff, and like it definitely helps you think like on your feet more. And then from D&D, I've played probably like 30 other games as well. So, but I think that D&D is the major league of like tabletop gaming. We will also be having 2 other players here and there. One of them is very new. This will be his first game ever. And the other has been, I think, been playing for maybe 3 or so years. But he's mainly done Pathfinder, which is a lot like Dungeons and Dragons for anybody that is wondering. There was a time when D&D was kind of crappy, and that was 4th edition. And when that happened, Pathfinder kind of took off, which took back to when D&D was kind of cooler, and that was like their like 3rd edition 3.5. So, but since then, Pathfinder has become its own game, and it's its own thing as well. So we're going to get right into character stuff in terms of how our party will be playing. Chase, why don't you introduce your character and your class and what's going on with your dude?
My character is a Goliath, is his race. He's going to be a barbarian. His name is Kataki Braveheart Stonecutter. His kind of backstory is a little bit of he's on the outside of the mountains with his tribe. Guy commits a crime, but there's like really no proof. They sentence him to death. My character kind of fights for it, says like, look, we got to have some proof and stuff. They, like the tribe's kind of against it. So they kill him. I get outcasted. So I make it to the town and I'm starting my life over again. I'm in a town where I'm 7'10". Like I don't know much, but like I'm getting hired as like a protector, kind of a bodyguard. My guy has got personality traits of kind of a different world than the world like I'm in, being in this town. So I like to pick things up. I fiddle with them. I break them and stuff. My ideal though is I grew up as I think each person is responsible to make the most and happiness for like their tribe and their group. So, and then my bond is I want to show my tribe there's a better way than just like
Violence.
This is law and stuff like that. So like I'm kind of like, this is the way.
This is the way.
Yeah, I stole that. And then my flaw though is I did grow up in this tribe, so I do have a whole like I don't expect to save anybody. I expect you to save yourself. I won't, like that's a flaw that I'm trying to learn away from my character. Like so like that's why I left. I did it once. I got out and I want to stop. Like I want to help people, but my character sometimes will be like, if you can do it yourself. Like I'm going to fight this guy, you fight that guy. Big thing with my character is I carry a great axe. I'm my class or my stats and stuff. I went heavy on strength and constitution, being a barbarian. So like I have high health, about 25 for a level 2, which is pretty high. My armor class is 15. My dex is 14.
That's fine, man.
Yeah,
I've got fur and like additional notes. I mean, that stuff's not really, really a big deal. I did want to say, change your axe. Don't want to give you something. So your guy was like a pretty good warrior, like a hunter in the tribe. So you actually were able to forge and build your own like specialized axe, which is like the skull of like a wyvern. So it actually deals like +1 damage.
Thanks, because I've written this in pen. Okay. Can't really do anything about it, but I'll take it.
Rookie mistake. Okay.
Max, since time is kind of the issue for you, why don't you go with like a little background on like in your guy?
Yeah, my guy's gonna be he's a gnome bard. His name's Fample Stamp. Amazing name. He was from the north and kind of really studied the gods as like the old gods, I guess, as a younger person, and had dreams of like becoming one of the best bards in the world. And it's kind of a big fish in a small pond situation where he goes to the city to study at this school that has all the best bars in the world in it and gets rejected. And then he goes to a bar and drinks, and this kind of local guy, I forget his name, kind of sees him, Ryan, and says, hey, you didn't get accepted into the school, but I can kind of teach you the ropes, and he kind of teaches him how to grift and all this stuff. And eventually one day, the his master gets caught, and instead of helping him out, all Fample Stamp does is just kind of steal his loot and is like, "Peace out, yo," and it's kind of living his best life, grifting people, doing everything he can.
Yeah. So his name was Rhyme Seeker.
Rhyme Seeker, that was it.
Yeah. And you stole his loot, which is named Old Silver. And actually, because of how unique it is and how like well maintained it is, write down that it gives you a +1 to perform.
+1 to perform?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then Matt, tell us a little bit about your dude.
I have made a, of course, this is right after Tasha's was released, and so I'm kind of playing with that, doing some new things. I've actually never played a human in D&D, so that's what I'm doing here. Human cleric, and I have chosen the Twilight domain because there's, I guess, some kind of fun things that looks like you can do with that. Spell wise, the spell lists that come with it, fairy fire, sleep, things that are not normally characteristics of clerics. Also took a feat from the new one, which allowed me to pick Mage Hand.
Oh, is that the psychic
Oh,
one?
Yeah.
Telekinesis.
Telekinetic, and it also gives me +1 wisdom, so it works towards that. But yeah, it's telekinetic, so you get Mage Hand, but it's invisible when you do it, and just kind of could be very useful in a sticky situation. So he's a cleric from the north. He is not from the area which our adventure begins, and he's kind of on a pilgrimage of sorts, being sent down for religious reasons. And he, I guess, during the great races that are coming up, when the winds of the Wyvern manifest, he's never had a chance to see that, and that's something he is very much looking forward to.
Cool. And then you have a shield, right?
I haven't 100% decided on that. I believe I'll probably have a shield, yes.
Okay, so give yourself a shield that has your like holy symbol on it.
Okay.
And then you get a +1 to diplomacy whenever you're around anybody that is like where it's influential towards like religion and stuff or whatever. So like when you're like in the prayer houses and churches and stuff, anytime that you're trying to invoke religion in some kind of way to talk your way into something or to add to something.
Okay, so I guess would that be persuasion, deception, intimidation?
I guess persuasion or like diplomacy in terms of basically like a charisma check or a skill check of that sort.
Okay.
And then Allison is our last person that is here, at least.
Yes. So, like I said before, my favorite class is Rogue. So that's what I'm doing again. Venna Molina is a half elf. She was raised in this city by her human father and her elf mother. They came to the town from Dalbo, and they when they got to town, they were kind of low on money and kind of a little desperate for funds. And my father was good with his hands, and he ended up finding a job working with the blacksmith in town. It was a job nobody wanted because the blacksmith is the only dwarf left in town, Ulfgar Fireforge. So our family's always been kind of looked down upon because my father works with the dwarf. So I was picked on a lot, but Uncle Ulfgar taught me how to fight with the swords. So I've always had that as a skill, a little Orlando Bloom from Pirates of the Caribbean. But my real goal in life is to race in the Flight of the Wyverns. So I've been pickpocketing and taking side jobs, trying to help my family make ends meet. But anything extra goes into my pocket. I try to collect materials or money or whatever to build my own skiff. I had a group of friends that was working with me, but they were not great people. So recently they actually took off with the things that we were using to build the skiff and the pieces and stuff. So I've been left with nothing. And now I am desperate and I am looking for a way to get on a team to work with somebody on a skiff so that I can win this race and finally be proud and bring, pride to my family and money, hopefully, and just, prove that we're worth something. So
Yeah. So
I real heavy in decks, obviously. Stealth, sleight of hand. I took expertise with a rogue. You get 2 expertise at level 1.
okay.
So I took perception and sleight of hand.
And for those who don't know, expertise basically allows you a double bonus into like certain skills, which means that Allison is twice as trained as the average rogue in those specific traits, which means that like her hands and her sight are like very good. And then also you have a trinket from your mom for when she left her tribe or whatever.
Okay.
And it's like a brooch, and it actually, you can use it to pick locks. So it's like it's this like in secret, it looks like jewelry, but you can like move around its arms and it's and everything to where it can fit like any lock and everything, whatever as well. So you've always got
That's cool.
like pick locks with. All right. So that is going to be the party for everybody going on. Hopefully you guys are interested. I think it's going to be a lot of fun with everything. Next time we should have a full group going on. And basically our story is going to lead into everybody is trying to get a part in this race. And it's going to lead everybody kind of down the same path where they end up meeting each other. And then also I wanted to say, I think it would be, let's say everybody's going to have a link together, but since we're all not here, we'll have to just text that so that everybody knows exactly what's going on. Because I'm not exactly sure how to fit everybody since there's only 4 of us as opposed to this. But guys, thank you so much for listening. As always, you can follow us on Into Geek on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on the moon, on everything or whatever, every type of platform. Next week, I believe, is the last of November, right? We're not quite into December yet.
That sounds accurate.
Because I assume that once we hit December, it's going to be all about Christmas and holiday movies and things like that and stuff, whatever. So,
well, if I have any say about it,
which would be Allison's favorite thing or whatever. Chase, do you have any last words before we sign off, man?
Yeah, I'm excited about the Christmas stuff we're going to do. Allison loves it, and I like to prove her wrong about what's a good Christmas movie and what's a bad one.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. Oh my
Oh,
god!
I agree with you there.
Oh my god, Andrew, do we agree on something?
People saying to no end. Maybe we'll do some a new iteration of like elevator pitch, and we'll make Allison do it for like Christmas films and stuff or whatever. And then we'll maybe get into our Christmas movie rankings and stuff, maybe like a battle royale of the greatest Christmas characters of all time and stuff or whatever. Who knows? I mean, I'm sure it'd be very exciting, but we're not there. We're not quite there yet. But so we have 1 more month for Thanksgiving, which I personally love Thanksgiving, but everybody else doesn't care about it. But I think it's amazing.
Thanksgiving is fine, but Christmas is better. So.
It takes all the greatness of that and expands it. It's amazing. Yeah, guys. So thank y'all so much. Until next time.
All right, later.